who those participants are. There's this system then asks for roles that those volunteers do, and you'll be able to add those roles in straight away and get those roles right for whoever's working on the system at your club. What it does very well, and it's quite unique as well, is it shares information with other ECB systems. So it starts doing a lot of the sort of legwork that you would have had to do previously to check whether volunteers have got qualifications, are they still in roles? The system will start doing that for you and interacting with other ECB systems. So information such as DBS, Safe Hands qualifications, it will check those for you and start doing the work for you. And that's part of the reason why it's so good. I think later on, further down the road, there'll be first aid and online safeguarding young cricketers will be added. But at the moment, it's just DBS and Safe Hands that are checked. Once you're up and running on the system, what you start to do then is to work towards compliancy. Now, what that means is that you get to the position where you've added all your volunteers onto the system. You've given roles to all of those volunteers. They've accepted those roles, which we'll come to later, and it can be a little bit of a bottleneck that, and that they've got all the relevant qualifications in place that they need to fulfill that regulator role at your club. Once that's done, the system will also check against some background information that you'll input as the administrator right at the very start, and it'll start cross-referencing the volunteers that you've got to the information that you put on the system. So just for example, you might have said that, yeah, we're a club, we've got 2 open age adult teams. The system might see that you've only got 1 team captain detail with a DBS check, and it'll flag that up as a problem for you and something you'll have to look into. And things like that will need sorting and actioning before you can gain full compliance in the system. So that's what we mean by compliancy. To summarize, the system enables clubs to proactively manage all of their safeguarding requirements. That's a really good thing to know, that as a club, you're on top of your safeguarding requirements, you're managing them, and that all your volunteers have the right qualifications in place. We see it as a big part of our foundation safeguarding strategy moving forward. And we see it as a really, really good online management tool just to make cricket a safer place for everybody. And that can only be a good thing. So that's a little bit of background for you about the Safe Hands management system. Let me move on and tell you about some of the benefits, which are always a good thing if there's benefits in it for you as clubs. It's a user-friendly and secure online system. So you've got full confidence in the information that you're loading up, and it's also ready accessible. So immediately, at any point you feel the need to, you can log into the system. It's always there for you, and it's always up to date. So again, a really good point. We mentioned on the previous slide about the system proactively managing safeguarding compliance with all the legal requirements of members in key roles and their qualifications. And one of the big things about it is it's a real-time environment. So before, some of you might have, as safeguarding officers or as secretaries, lead administrators at a club, you may have kept sort of spreadsheets detailing all the volunteers that are on there, what roles they have, are they DBS checked, what other qualifications do they need. There'll be no need for that anymore. This system will do all that for you, and it won't be accurate at a snapshot in time. It'll be accurate ongoing, day after day. So anytime you log in and look at the system, it'll straight away tell you what's the status of your volunteers. Are you fully compliant? Do you meet the requirements of your safeguarding information? What qualifications have your volunteers got? Is their DBS in date? And it'll do all that for you. Now, it does require a little bit of work up front to get everything online. But beyond this, it will really make managing compliance easier and more efficient for you. So what you'll be able to do, once you put in the initial information about your club, ensure that all your volunteers are on there and they've got roles, they've all accepted them, you've worked with your safeguarding officer to ensure that they've got a DBS or any other qualifications that are required. You can then forward plan for your volunteers to remain qualified. The system itself will tell you the DBS expiry dates of all your volunteers. It'll tell you when the Safe Hands qualifications expire, and moving forward, it'll tell you when other qualifications require. And this is a fantastic online tool for you to use to be able to keep your volunteers qualified, DBS checked, and keep your club safeguarding compliant. So you really will be able to forward plan and keep ahead of the game in that respect. The next bullet point we got on there really does follow on from that. Surely that's going to give you peace of mind for your club officials. Having that accurate and up-to-date information for your committee, your safeguarding officers, for everybody who's involved at your club, but also for the people that are coming into your club, your members, your junior members, parents, to know that you're compliant on this system and that your volunteers have all the checks in place that they need. It is a really good thing and gives everybody peace of mind. Really good offer coming up, free public liability insurance for registered clubs. So if your club's registered on the system, you qualify for free public liability insurance through the ECB's insurance at Howdens. Now, Matt will probably touch on this a little bit later, and we'll certainly help and support you in how to claim this, but it really is pretty straightforward once you are registered. It's a question of loading up a risk assessment for your club and then getting in touch with Howdens via the system to try and claim this insurance. I think Matt's club at Huntsville were one of the first to take advantage of this insurance. I think there's a really big saving for them, and it's been great for us to sort of pass that on to other clubs and find so many of our clubs have actually taken advantage of that and used it as a good bonus for being part of the system. Finally, it's the support that's on offer to try and help you manage this system, to use the system and to progress with it. I think from the ECB and from ourselves here, it's really, really good. It's second to none on a lot of the systems that I've seen that's come out of the ECB. There's a help desk on every page of the portal and the system as you use it. It's in the bottom right-hand corner. It lets you access a drop-down menu for any queries or issues that you may have. So it makes actually filling that in easier. It goes straight to the right people at the ECB who can answer your queries. The help desk at the ECB are very good and they do come back to you really quickly. And it's a good tool to use as part of the system. There's also an ECB direct system help desk. We found that a lot of our clubs have already gone through this process, used them fairly regularly, found them to be very professional, very courteous, very helpful, and very quick as well. And that's a huge thing. We know as volunteers, when you're making time to look at systems like this and action it, you want to be able to solve issues quite quickly because your time is quite important. And I think the ECB help desk are very good at that. There are video tutorials available. And if you're like me, you'll sort of hear the phrase video tutorials and your shoulders might drop a little bit and you slump and you think, how long am I going to be watching these? These video tutorials are fantastic. They're sort of 90-second, 2-minute snippets. They take you through every aspect of every different type of action that you'd need to do on the portal. They've got screenshots of how it works. They've got somebody actually showing you how to use it and how to follow that process. I'm sure Matt will sort of touch on these a little bit further when he digs a little bit deeper into the system for you. But I can't recommend the video tutorials strongly enough. They're really great. And finally, the Somerset Cricket Foundation, we're here to support you. We really believe in this system and how better it's going to make our safeguarding, how it's going to influence our strategy, let us work with you more to manage your safeguarding, and we want this to work for you. So myself, Matt and Nikki, we're all going to be working on this at various points to support you and help you. So yeah, we're here to support you with that as well. So I hope that's really sort of spelled out how the system can work for you and some of the benefits that are available for you. Matt, can you pop the next slide on, please? So just need to sort of little stop there for a moment and check where you are and where we all should be with it and what you've received. As lead administrators or lead contacts of your club with this Safe Hands Management System, you should have received a number of communications. Firstly, back in October, we sent you an initial email from ourselves regarding the launch of the new system. And I think in that email as well, we also advise you of things that you could start thinking about, next steps quite quickly to actually get ahead of the game and start being ready for the system. Some of that will still apply, and it's worth having a look back through that email, making sure you've got it, making sure you're aware of what we're asking you to do at the time. On the 17th of December, we sent you a further communication about the system and gave you the date for this webinar. As I said earlier, it's great to see so many of you on it, and it's great to see that a lot of you have already started accessing the system. And then finally, last week on the 3rd of February, we sent you the email advising that ECB will be in contact with you as the main administrator, and the invite email to log into the system, access the system, and to get you started on it. So really, from the 4th of February onwards, all of you should have received an invite email from the ECB inviting you to log on. I do think Matt touched on it earlier. I think we've got 4 clubs who haven't actually received that yet. Certainly 3 of those clubs, we would expect you to receive that by Monday at the latest. And I'm hoping that early next week, we're going to have all of our clubs with access, all of our clubs logged in and had a look. If you haven't located that, any of those emails, particularly the ECB invite email, I've given you a couple of email addresses at the bottom of this slide, just to have a look for. Have a look in your junk, have a look in your spam. It could be that's where it's going to be coming from. So it's worth just checking that. But there's a little bit of information there that was sent you. Hopefully you've all got access to the system. Hopefully what I've just run through on the 2 previous slides has sort of given you a good background to the system, how it's going to benefit you as a club, and what we're looking for you to do and what you should have received so far. So a little bit for you to process and take in there. I'm going to ask Matt to hand over to Nikki now, and Nikki's going to take you through a little bit more of digging into the system and which are the regulated roles that you need to start adding. So Nikki.
Thanks, Bri. As Bri's already mentioned, the roles required are what we refer to as regulated roles. So these are roles which the ECB determines require a DBS or additional qualifications. There's a list here that you can see, which it's by no means an exhaustive list, but these are probably the main roles that you will have volunteers within your club fulfilling. One thing to look at, where it says the roles listed require a DBS, that takes you to the full ECB list of regulated roles. And then there's another link on here, which is to the ECB qualified coach. Coaching qualifications, as some of you may be aware, have changed over the last year, and there may be coaches who have older qualifications. So you can go to that link and see how they fit into the coaching matrix, coaching qualification matrix. There are some coaches like the old foundation one who aren't able to lead a session, so don't count as a qualified coach, but they would qualify as an assistant coach. So if you do have any queries over where your volunteers should fit, then drop us a line and we'll be able to help you work out what role they need to be put against. You also need to add your club administrator. Most of you will already have had the invites. If you haven't, let us know. I've just noticed Greg Jones hasn't had his invite, so we'll have a look at that tomorrow. You can apply administrator roles to other users once they've accepted their invite. So don't think that you have to do all the work on your own. Your club chair will also need adding. The club chair and the administrator aren't classed as regulated roles, so they don't need a DBS unless they are fulfilling one of the other roles on the list. Matt, can you, next slide, please. Yeah, we've had a couple of questions in, Bri. It looks like there might be a permissions issue for some of the main administrators. They're the only administrators on there at the moment, but they haven't been able to update or change their club details.
Yeah, I did pick up on that question, Nikki. Thanks. I've noticed in the chat box that there are a few system issue questions around permissions and access, changing an address. That's something that we can put straight back on the help desk. For those of you that are sort of really proactive on that already and using the system like that, that will be a really good test point for you guys at the start, and for your to use the help desk and possibly ask that question of them. However, we're more than happy to ask it in these early stages. We're more than happy to ask that question. So what we'll do, Nikki, I think, is collate all the issues that we've had regarding the system, regarding people not being able to change addresses, not being able to add a volunteer, or if there's a permission issue, and we can put those to the ECB in one hit, and we will copy you in when we do that. So we'll do that in the next couple of days.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anything else on there, Nikki, that needs our attention?
I think there was a couple of other questions, but hopefully we should cover those during the course of the webinar, which is volunteers who are registered at another club and how we classify vice captains.
Yeah, just on the issue of very quickly answer at the moment, the only requirement is to load on your team captains on the system. However, a lot of the leagues that we work with are now looking at adding vice captains as a requirement on the system. We think that's a really good idea, particularly as captains aren't available all the time. So you're quite at liberty to put your vice captain under the team captain's role, and they can be added under the same role. I think it actually might even state team or vice captains, I'm not sure, but they can certainly go under the team captain's role if they are a vice captain. So hopefully we can answer that one now for you.
Yeah, just on that one. So that was my question. It's John from Cleve. We put him in as an actual open age group captain, but then we got a flag saying you've got more open age captains than you have teams.
Okay, yeah, that's a really good question there. I'm not sure why that's cropped up, because in the past I think we've always been able to add captains to the right number. What we'll do, we'll take that away and we'll ask that question for you and find out why that is the case.
Thanks.
Okay, Matt, do you want to move? Are there any more questions, Nikki, that we should pick up just before we move on?
Not at this stage.
Sorry, just one more. Sorry, it's me again. Sorry.
That's fine. It's okay.
We got a dad that runs an under-13 team with his son, but the dad plays his senior cricket at a different club. We've tried to register him under us, but it's flagged up that he's already registered elsewhere, so we can't register him.
Matt, are you able to answer that one?
Yeah. Yeah, hopefully I'll show you in a minute. It's because they're all, so it's the set, we've got it already with a couple of clubs here. So we've got a couple of new administrators, but they're already on the system with another club which they work with. So the way the system works is you have one unique record. So all it is an email to the help desk stating the person's name, who you need to be added on yours, and they will merge their record across to your club, so it appears at 2. So yeah, basically it's only picking up unique people. So if someone's already in there, you need the help desk to do that for you. But there is a way, which I'll show you in the system, if it's still there in the contact the help desk system, which I'll just, when I start sharing my screen to show you. But that's one, if you've got any volunteers who are already on the system with another club, it's an email to the help desk to ask them for their record to be merged across onto yours as well.
Yeah, can I just say something? Because I've had the same problem of having somebody who's helping in our junior section who scores for another club. I emailed the help desk and they came back almost like immediately to help to say that they've merged the records. So the help desk line is really helpful, really on it basically. So just to confirm that the system, it does work.
Oh,
So
okay, thank you.
Thanks, Heather. Right, I'm just going to switch my screen. So I'll talk through this element in a minute, but hopefully I can walk and talk you through most things. So when you, this is often the landing screen you will get for Safe Hands once you're registered. So it's a very quickly, a click for me is sign in, and it brings up my stuff here. So I'll talk you through as we go. Oh, good start. Okay. Right, so this will be the screen that you will see when you go in live. So it's telling me that welcome, and then it has a lot of different things along the top. So your dashboard, your profile, your role, your login details, your sign out. I won't go into some of them because it will reveal a load of personal details about myself, but your login details there, that's where you can change passwords, etc. Your roles are the roles which are allocated to you as a person. So that's where you can accept them or not accept them. My profile, that's quite important. So that is where a person makes sure all their details are correct. and then the dashboard takes you to your club profile. So at the moment it says here, so as a club, this is my club, it says we are in progress. We're in progress because something is not currently compliant on the system. So it might be waiting for a new volunteer to be join our club and accept their role, or someone's qualification is out of date. As I'm a club admin, there's also tasks and flags here. So if you've got major issues on your system, so a required role is not filled, you might have a warning flag here. Here might be an info where you can click on it and it might have a notification to explain why. And then it will tell you here, this ultimately tells you whether you're compliant or compliant. So you would click on club admin. And it comes on through, and then it comes into the club profile. So this is my club. It's got all our details. So obviously some of you at the moment are having difficulties around changing information. If it works properly, you type it in the box and you save changes at the bottom. One of the reasons it may not be working for the new clubs, just think about, is because all the info for addresses have been pulled from Play Cricket. So that's where they got all the information. So if the addresses should be the same ones as they are on your Play Cricket account, which the ECB held, but we will pick that up tomorrow. So my first part would be always to start with your club information. So that makes sure that's up to date. I would then, the next part I would do is your teams and your programs. So basically completing what you do as a club. So little on the end, you can edit here to make it a yes or a no. And then on teams, you click over there. So you can type how many teams you've got, and then you can change your participants by doing the same on the bottom. And then as you click off, it normally does a whirl and a green to show that it's done. So that would be always my starting point on the system. Do that and then that. I will talk about venues insurance in a minute, because that's where you can claim your free insurance. But the main part then is focusing on your clubs and officials. So you click on here. So some of you have already been using the system, and you seem to be doing it very well by the large number of people going on there. So we've got lots and lots of people here. So when you add a person for the first time, you click on new official here, and it wells up and it says, please note the appointing person. So this is really key. So when they're invited, they've got 45 days to accept their role. I will just get an email address here. So I will show you someone that I know who's a new volunteer for Huntsville this year. So go there, and she is with me. I'll just check the email address. So then you're ready. Then it will bring up the roles that this person will be doing, and you can then select those which apply. So in Emma's case, it will be coach and All Stars activator. So one thing which still hasn't been changed, frustratingly, is the term All Stars activator. It is due to be changed to national programs to reflect that some clubs do All Stars and Dynamos. So if you are doing Dynamos and they're a Dynamos activator, please just put them through on the system as an All Stars activator. And then you click create official. Processing and working. Do that through. And then once it's processed, it takes you back to the main screen. So contact an official. If you need to, if you've already got someone on the system, but they now have an additional role with your club, the quickest way to do that is by adding role. So click on add role. Roles up, and then you select the contact. So I need to add a new one for Debbie Palfrey. So add Debbie and go down, and she is now a coach. And it will start activator. Bottom. And then you press submit, and then they will get an invite from the portal. And again, it always will take you back to this home screen. If you appoint someone at your club and then they're no longer doing that role and you need to get rid of them, the way to do that is on the actions button on the end. So you click on that and it brings up retire from role. If they're no longer doing it, you click that button and it removes them from that role on your dashboard. So what you might find is you may put someone in as an assistant coach and they're actually a full coach, or you might, or vice versa. So that's the quickest way of removing that person and changing their role. The help button is down here, so you can type in different questions here and hopefully get the answer, or you can also contact them directly from the system. Also at the very bottom, if a person, so they've had their invite, they've accepted their role, but they know they haven't got a DBS, if they click on DBS applications, they can fill in a form for the ECB to set up a DBS for them. If a safeguarding officer knows they haven't got any training or their training's expired, they can click on courses or refresh courses at the bottom, and it will bring up the list of available courses across the country for people to book on. So there's a way of finding courses on there as well. So venues and insurance. So one of the big benefits around the system is the free public liability insurance via Howdens. My personal club, we saved about £300 by going through the scheme. And there were some clubs who saved nearly £800 in Somerset by going through this scheme. So you can make some pretty hefty savings. What you need to do is you would create a venue. So you would add new venue and fill in the relevant information for your club. And then for the insurance, you have to complete a risk assessment. So if you click on new risk assessment, I'm hoping it will follow and you can see this, is it takes you to the Howdens portal, and you basically, as your club, you click get started and you answer a series of questions about the club and what it runs. And then at the end, you press submit. Once you've submitted your risk assessment, Howdens will be in contact with you about awarding you your free insurance. One thing that we found last year is there were some people in the club, so the admin wasn't necessarily, for safe hands, the same person who deals with insurance. So a lot of clubs added additional admins. So through the process of adding a club official, so they added that person to the system so they could be responsible for sorting out the free insurance. If someone's accepting, if they need to accept a role, sometimes if they're already on the system and you give them an additional role, it is worth noting that they might not always get an automated email. 95% of the time it does happen, but sometimes they have to just log in, click on my roles, and then there'll be an action button against the role and they click on it to accept it or decline it. So that, in a nutshell, is most of the system. And that is the system. One thing which I didn't mention, because it's always there. So the task alert is basically telling you what your status is. So we're in progress because we've got different people on the system who are currently pending roles. So what you have is compliant and accepted to show they've accepted their role, valid if they've got a DBS expiry and the relevant qualifications. So if I move across, so I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 people with invited status. So that means they're invited, they haven't accepted the role. So their status on the system is pending. And then I've got one more on there at the end. So if someone accepts their role, their status still may be as pending because it does take the system anywhere up to 48 hours to pull through different qualifications. Right, there's probably loads of questions coming in. So I wonder if it's worth taking a few questions now while I'm in the system before I go back to the Zendesk links.
Yeah, good idea, Matt.
If anyone, if you want to fire away, Nick or Bri.
Nikki, do you want to throw some questions out there?
Yeah, there are quite a few in here. Colin asked and Bri has answered, but just in case anyone else was wondering, some club addresses have been listed as residential postal addresses because they don't have a postal address for the pavilion. So does it need to be the physical location of the ground or the postal address for correspondence? And Brian has said it really needs to be the location because all the communication goes by email anyway. Harry has asked how many admins they can add. As far as I'm aware, there is no limit.
You can have as many. You can have as many as you like.
But he has highlighted that he's added himself for 2 roles and has already received 2 automated emails. So yes, we are aware. Every time you add somebody for a new role, you end up with another automated email asking you to accept the role, even if all the roles are added at the same time. I think they still send out an email for each role. And Cleve have asked if they can find out what the free insurance covers, if there's an easy way to do that.
Yeah, I will. I think I've got that. I'll put that link in the chat box when someone else is presenting.
And John Grundy has asked, with regards to DBS for new people needing them, do we go via this site or speak to Amanda?
Personal preference, really. So if you've got someone who can set them up, they will set them up, but you can do it via this system once they've accepted their role. So they would need to be added as a person on the system. The person accepts their role and then they initiate that bit. So it's up to you, as long as they get a DBS, whichever method they use. We wouldn't be fussed which way around they do.
I'd advise, Matt's spot on there with what he said. I'd also advise maybe starting that process sooner rather than later. So if you need to go through your own club safeguarding officer, go through Amanda at the league, go through any of us here at the Cricket Foundation, we can start that process for you.
Yeah, I do have one other question actually, which was from Sean at Ilminster, which is probably quite relevant to a few clubs, and that's the compliancy element related to age group managers. The system expects you to have a different person for each age group. It doesn't take into account that at a lot of clubs you will have one manager potentially covering multiple age groups.
Yep, that's a good point, Nikki. It's a good point, Sean, as well. We had raised that with the ECB previously because we have come across that before with other clubs that have been through the system. It is a system requirement and you do have to detail that. Some clubs have actually added the role to volunteers who are qualified, do have the DBSs, knowing that they've got people in place who are running the team. I think the ECB are looking into this, but until then, you do need to have a team manager detail for each junior side that you run. hopefully there aren't too many instances where that's a problem.
Mike Clement has asked regarding the free insurance, is it for 1 year? Don't want to upset the current insurer if for 1 year only.
Matt, do you want to say that?
Public liability, it's ongoing. Be ongoing free if you're set up. And they just email you. I had our email last week to say we've got our free insurance again. So to be clarifying, I think I picked up a little bit. I've read the chat. So about the Cleve answer, it wouldn't cover the square cover like physical elements. It's your public liability element of it. So your fixtures and fittings, you would need to get insured separately from that. So but I will put the link to the Howdens in the chat in a minute when I pass back over. So I will just go back to the presentation.
Yeah, I've got one last question before we move on. This one's probably a good one for Bri to answer. It's from Keith at Wedmore. He said, is it normal to have a DBS manager and a safe hands lead as separate roles?
By DBS manager, I presume you're more referring to a club safeguarding officer who would action most of your DBSs and be responsible for all aspects of safeguarding at your club. There is a mix. Some clubs have the lead administrator and the club safeguarding officers the same person. Some clubs have them as separate people. I don't think there's any right or wrong way. It's what works for your club. The only thing I would say about the system is it's a really good idea to get a whole club buy-in on the system, get the committee involved, get the whole club buy-in so that they can help and support and push you forward towards compliance as soon as possible. And it becomes a club effort and everybody's responsibility is safeguarding. So the more people that are involved with the process, the better. I don't think it matters if the club safeguarding officer and the lead administrator is either separate or the same person. It might make it easy if they were different people. I think it's somebody who needs to be in touch with the junior section, in touch with the club, and really has pretty half decent IT skills as ought to be your club lead administrator. And if that's your club safeguarding officer, fantastic. If it's not, hopefully it's somebody else who steps forward. But as I say, try and involve your committee, try and involve the whole club. Safeguarding is everybody's responsibility. Matt, do you just want to cover off all the links on there?
Yeah, there's a couple more questions which are quite relevant.
Okay.
So with the public
Heather,
liability, you don't need to switch it, Heather. So if your other policy doesn't have to be with Howdens, last year clubs had combination, so you can go to Howdens for everything, but others went with others. So it's not a stipulation you have to move lock stock to Howdens for everything. Under 19s captain, do they need to have a DBS? Yes, they would if they're over the age of 16. And DBSs, if it's currently in date, their DBS, it is carried over. So as long as it's in date, or if they're on the update service, it carries on.
And that's the beauty of the system, really. That once you've loaded those individuals, once they've accepted their roles, the system will pick that up for you.
Yeah. So before I pass back to, I think, Brian, just this slide, when we will circulate these, we've just put together all the quick links to key videos. So this will take you to the various different videos within the Zendesk for all the different elements. So things that you might, the things that you're going to have to look at probably most often. So all in one place. So right. Over.
Nick, I think you're on mute.
Sorry, I pressed it and it didn't work. Matt and I have used the front end of the system, so we're in a pretty good place to give advice on how the system works and some top tips. As Matt's already shown, you can add multiple roles to a contact in one action. When we spoke about contacts who already have a record at another club, there you can use this link, and that will show you how it works. But as Matt said, it's as simple as just emailing the help desk, and they'll be able to sort that out for you. When the automated reminders go out, people get a reminder after 7 days and 21 days, but then that will expire after 45 days. So you might find you need to do a bit of chasing in between to get people to accept their roles. But as an administrator, you can, oh, my screen's just gone. You can send reminders, let's come back, send reminders directly to the contacts who haven't accepted their roles. And just generally, like we touched on earlier, ensure that the correct roles are allocated to your volunteers. We've seen a lot of people be put down as coaches when they don't actually have qualifications, when they should be down as support coaches. That's something to be aware of. And also be aware that if your contact isn't aware that they're going to be added to the system, they can just reject it. One of our main tips when you are adding new volunteers is to make sure you use their full name as shown on their passport or driving license to make sure that it matches up with their DBS, whether they've got the DBS or the DBS is in process. Because one of the things we saw last year was nicknames were used instead of full names. So we then had to talk to the ECB about getting volunteers matched up. One thing that isn't listed there, but is probably quite relevant, we do realise that there are other DBS systems in place through different regulated sports, but they don't count by the ECB. So any DBSs need to be ECB DBSs to be recognised. Appreciate it's people aren't always forthcoming to get DBSs signed off, but it is a free system. So it's not, there's no real burden to get DBSs on multiple systems. So go ahead, Matt.
Okay, two really great slides there that we had from Matt and Nikki. Hopefully they sort of dug a little bit deeper into the system for you and tried to give you the first examples of exactly how it works, and providing you with more of an insight and into navigating the system, and hopefully giving you a little bit more confidence to use it. It is a pretty straightforward system. There are issues that arise occasionally, which we can help you, or the help desk can help you with. One thing I would say before we just take any further questions that have come in, with the questions that you provide, if it's a system issue, it's probably something that we can't fix or can't give you an answer for. And that's where the ECB help desk, either directly to the help desk or the help desk on the portal, are really good. Because if you put that question into them, it'll go straight to the people who can answer it for you. They can also log it as a next question and hopefully try and head it off for future users. And they'll generally respond to you pretty quickly, pretty timely, and also with really good information. Now, we don't mind helping at all. That's what we're here for. And we'll gladly sort of forward these queries on. But if you're looking for a really quick answer and the right people to go to in the first instance, then the help desk on the system or via the ECB help desk is the right way to go. If your questions sort of more relate to what I should be loading, does this person need a DBS, what's their role, should I have more than one people on there, anything of that nature, then we can definitely help you and we can get your answers pretty quickly. So it's just a little bit of a guide for you in how we can sort of all tackle the questions and where we can get the best advice from. So I think now, before we sort of move into our closing slides, it's been great that we've had so many questions so far. What it tells us is that there's so many people engaging with the system and you're actually finding out what the issues are really early. That's great. We can help you. The ECB can help you. And it shows that you're actually moving in, engaging with the system. So brilliant that we've got the questions. Nikki, is there anything else that you want to throw in the questions before we move on?
Yeah, a couple more. One's relating to DBSs. Harry says, I can't see my own DBS status. However, it says my role qualification expires 2023. Is this the same thing? One thing I should have mentioned in the top tips is The DBS status, if you've got a DBS, a current DBS, it can take 24, 48 hours to pull through. In some instances, it's taken up to a week for that to show on the system. So it may be just that your DBS status hasn't pulled through properly yet. I'm not sure about the role qualification.
I think that's spot on, Nikki. Just to help you understand the system and the dashboard, volunteers who haven't accepted their role will show as pending. Volunteers who have accepted their role but don't have a DBS will show as incomplete. And volunteers who've accepted their role and have a DBS in place will show as compliant. In the DBS status, once you have a DBS, it will put the expiry date in there. And a DBS status, if not present, will show as exactly that, not present. And the DBS status, if you do have one, will show as valid. Nikki's really spot on there, particularly now as the system gets used a lot and the traffic goes up on it. Generally, DBSs take, if it's good and everything's in order, it'll probably pull through overnight or within 24 hours. But they do occasionally take 2, 3, 4, 5 days to pull through. So I do think you just need to give the system a little bit of time to update and go through from there.
Lovely. And the final question in here at the moment is from Mike Clement saying, following AGMs, we may have different captains, etc., without DBS checks. Will this cause problems when amending club details, etc.?
Okay, no, it won't. Part of the screen that Matt's shown you earlier shows you how to delete volunteers, how to change roles, how to add new volunteers. And we're finding that clubs who were fully compliant last year are going through this process now with their AGMs. It is that time of year for it. And they're just updating the system with deleting old volunteers, changing roles, adding new volunteers. They will need a DBS if they're in that regulated role. And we've provided you the link for all the regulated roles that you need. Nikki's been through that earlier slide. So our advice will be, if you know who those captains are, straight away at your AGM, that the first thing you should be telling them on appointment is you will need a DBS check. Again, your club safeguarding officer can undertake that. We can undertake that, or Amanda at the league can undertake that for you. So hopefully that clears that one up. Anything else?
Yeah, Nick's just asked, is there a web address for SHMS which can be bookmarked easily on my web browser?
Matt, can you take that one?
Yeah, I'll put it in the chat in a minute.
Brilliant. Really good. Thanks, mate. That's good. Okay, if there's no more questions, we'll move on. Nikki, do you want to take this slide?
Yeah, so as we've already mentioned, this webinar, this presentation has all the links to the tutorial videos. Like Bryce said, they're generally 90 minutes, 2 minutes long, not too onerous to watch and really, really helpful. Matt's already shown that there's the help form at the bottom of every page, which brings up the search box. So you can put in general questions, and if that doesn't answer, you can go through to the help desk. They are really responsive. They generally come back same day, which is great. And there's further links on here to what we call the Zen desk. And there is an email address directly as well, safehands@ecb.co.uk. But there's also me, Matt and Bri. If we need to do one-to-ones with people to help them through the system, talk them through the system, we're more than happy to do that. Matt and I, like I've mentioned, we've already used the front end, so we know exactly what's going on, and we are happy to help in any way we can, because we realise there's a lot going on for clubs, and this is another platform that they're being asked to use. So we're really keen to help anyone who does need help from us. And we'd rather know about it now than get 3 months down the line when we're getting close to that compliancy date and then have to struggle to get clubs through. Next slide, Matt.
Okay, we're just about at the end now. I'd just like to talk you through the next steps and where you should be going from here and what you should be looking to do, and really getting the system to work for you and save you time and effort. So first of all, ensure that you accept the role as a club administrator. So log in, and accept your role, and then that'll enable you to start working on the system. You can then update all the required club information that Matt touched on earlier, number of teams, players, your address, everything else that needs to be on there. You can put that background information in. As I mentioned to you quite early on, that's quite key, because when you're looking at becoming compliant, the system will refer back to that information as against the number of volunteers that you've got with the required qualifications. So really important that that front end information is loaded. Start adding your volunteers to the system and allocating roles to them. And that's a really good time to communicate with your safeguarding officer, but also the general committee. You know, you're not going to know every volunteer that's helping in the junior section, or that may be a first aider. And so the committee sort of giving you that support and that information. I think it's really important. You know, we can't stress enough how safeguarding is everybody's responsibility at the club. So for the system to work, try and involve your committee, start adding your volunteers and allocate roles to them. What we found is one of the biggest bottlenecks when using the system is getting volunteers to accept those roles. Until they do, you can't move on with the system, and the system won't start working for you and checking what those volunteers have or have not in place and what you need to start putting in place for them. So we've given you a template email on the earlier emails that we sent to you. We remember in the earlier slides, we gave you the communication emails, just as a reminder. Within those emails, there's a template which we sent to you, which will enable you to contact each volunteer. So once you add a role to a volunteer, the ECB system automatically generates an email to them to say, you've been added to this system. Would you like to log in and accept the role? Here's the information. This template email we've given you is actually a really good support to that. So as soon as you add a role onto a volunteer, send them this email and it'll get them switched on to expecting the ECB email, and they can log in and accept that role pretty quickly. And that will really move things forward for you quite fast. As a club administrator, along with your safeguarding officer, along with the committee, you're responsible for adding all volunteers to the system who hold these key roles at the club. So once you've done that, the system will start working for you, and it will start telling you which of these volunteers have the correct qualifications in place, who's got a DVS, who has got a safe hands, who hasn't. And then you'll be able to see which of these volunteers need the qualifications that they require. What we've done there is we've put a really one-stop link on there to our website, and that will tell you how to access these qualifications for your volunteers. Some we can help you with and will need to help you with. Some you'll go through your own club safeguarding officer if they're registered to initiate and verify DBSs. The league can also help you, particularly Amanda. So at that point, moving through the process, this is a good place to be, because your volunteers will be on, they'll have roles, you'll have put the background information in, and then you're starting to look at the key aspect of making sure they've got a DBS and other qualifications in place. And finally, you aren't on your own with this. The system may seem a touch daunting at the moment, but it's really not once you get to start using it. We really believe in the effect and the impact it's going to have for you. And we're here to support you through the process to full compliancy. What we'd like to do and recommend is that all of the clubs here on the system aim to complete this by the 29th of April, which is before the first weekend of the 2022 season. If you can do that, you're going to show all your members, your juniors, your parents, all the people at your club that you are as safeguarding compliant as you can be, and that all your safeguarding procedures are in place. And that'll be before you undertake any sort of regulated league cricket before the start of the season. So that's a really good target to aim for. We're here to support you to do that, and hopefully we can sort of see you through to compliance at that stage. Matt, just before I hand over to you to close everything off, is it worth us having a quick look at any more questions, Nikki?
Just so everyone knows, I have put the link in for Safe Hands Management, the direct link which you can pin to your desktop or your browser. Heather at Glastonbury has just asked if there are plans for this to be part of a club mark type process in the future.
Sorry, Nick, go on.
I know I'm probably going to say exactly the same as you, Bri, which it is forming part of the club mark process this year.
Yep. Previously, with Club Mark, all clubs had to be Safe Hands Management System compliant. That's, as Nick quite rightly says, that's been updated this year. So any current Club Mark clubs have to be Safe Hands Management compliant, but also have to start a new Club Mark process and start loading up some key information in documents. But again, that's something we can discuss at a later date with clubs.
Yeah, Heather's also asked if safe hands will become obligatory for clubs in the future. So last year we onboarded all the club mark clubs, and this year we are onboarding all clubs who are engaging in national programmes or youth cricket. And we're anticipating that next year the remaining clubs in the county will also be onboarded. So yes, it is going to be obligatory for all clubs within the next 12 to 24 months, I would imagine.
That's good. Anything else, Nick, that's relevant in the chat box? Or if there isn't, we can certainly answer questions. Please email us with any queries or questions you've got. We will get back to you for all the outstanding questions that we've got. They seem to be mainly system issues, so we will take those on board and deal with those tomorrow. If you have any other questions, please drop us an email. We will get back to you. Nick, is there any last ones we want to pick up?
No questions, but both Cleve and Ilminster have said they've started, they're using the system and it actually is pretty straightforward to use. And Sian agrees that, as long as people accept their roles, then it's pretty straightforward to use it.
That's fantastic, guys. Thank you for that feedback as well. That's really good. Hopefully that gives some others on the call a bit of a boost. I'm going to hand you over to Matt in a second, as I say, to close down, but I'd just like to thank you all for your time. It's been great having you all on board. I hope you find it useful and informative, and you can start to begin to see the benefits of the system. You're not on your own. We are here to help. And from me, thanks. Matt?
Yeah, thanks everyone for your time this evening. That brings us to the end. As everyone said, we're here to help. If you get stuck along the way, just ask us, use the help desk. If you find things that doesn't work, report them to the help desk, but just let us know as well, because it helps us manage expectations with other clubs, because sometimes we do find new things. But thank you for your time, and we will aim to get the presentation and recording out for you at some point tomorrow. And enjoy the rest of your evening and look forward to seeing you soon.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Thanks all.
Thank you.